Alrighty guys, do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you're new to the channel and if you enjoyed this video. So I was actually asked a question by a subscriber telling me, you know, does Dominic Breazeale even, like, has he even earned a shot to be Deontay Wilder's mandatory? Like, how is he even Deontay Wilder's mandatory? Like, what did he do? What did this man do to deserve that mandatory position? And, you know, if you actually take a look at his last couple of recent fights, you know, he fought Carlos Negron. Personally, I never heard of Carlos Negron. I never heard of this guy. Okay? That was kind of like a stay busy fight, I guess, because you know, he was coming off like a 1-year layoff, right? Prior to that, he fought Eric Molina, and that was a whole year ago. So his last 2 fights was against Carlos Negron, a guy I never heard of, and Eric Molina. Those were the 2 guys he beat to put himself in a position to be the #1 mandatory. Prior to that, obviously, he fought Izu Ogono and Anthony Joshua, and guys like Amir Mansell. Now, I do think that the Izu Ogono fight was a good win for him just because Izu Ogono was unbeaten. Okay? For example, I think Izu Ogono, although he hadn't fought anyone, I thought he was a better fighter than both Eric Molina and Carlos Negron. So I do give him some credit for that because that was a great fight. I love that fight. I just watched it recently again, you know, just because it was a great fight. But to answer your question, like, does he deserve a shot at Deontay Wilder? I mean, no, not really. Does he deserve a shot at, you know, being mandatory? No, not really. But when it comes to Wilder, you know, most of his title defenses came against guys that didn't really earn it. Didn't really deserve it anyway, you know. Like, that's the history of Deontay Wilder. He tends to defend his belts against guys that really didn't earn their way to fight for that championship belt. For example, if you compare what Dominic Breazeale has done recently to what Dillian Whyte has done recently, clearly Dillian Whyte is the guy who deserves this shot at Deontay Wilder, because Dillian Whyte, in terms of quality opponents recently, he's been fighting way better opposition than Dominic Breazeale, right? I mean, he fought Derek Chisora, who always comes to fight. He beat Joseph Parker, who was a former champion. He beat guys like Lucas Brown, who was a former champion. He beat guys like Robert Helenius, and you compare, and he, like I said, he's been working, he's been grinding, he's been fighting a lot. You compare that to Dominic Breazeale's last 2 recent fights against Carlos Negron and Eric Molina and Izu Ogono. Clearly, Dillian Whyte has fought the better quality opposition. So yes, when it comes to like guys who deserve to be facing Deontay Wilder, who deserve to be the mandatory right now for Deontay Wilder, it should be Dillian Whyte. It should be Dillian Whyte because Dillian Whyte clearly fought the better opposition. So yeah, I do agree on that. I do think Dillian Whyte deserves it over Dominic Breazeale. But again, when it comes to Deontay Wilder, with the WBC, you know, they let Deontay Wilder have these voluntaries against guys like Eric Molina, against guys like Arthur Spilka, against guys like Johan Dupas, and these guys didn't earn it. These guys were fighting nothing but bums. So, like I said, if they were gonna let Deontay Wilder voluntarily fight these guys who didn't earn it, these guys, most people didn't even know who they were, then of course they're gonna let. That's why, like, of course they're gonna let Dominic Breazeale be the mandatory. And I remember being pissed off when the WBC ordered Eric Molina versus Dominic Breazeale to basically be determined the #1 mandatory. That's how Dominic Breazeale won that mandatory position. He fought Eric Molina and he beat him. And when he beat him, he became mandatory. And I thought that was the most ridiculous thing ever, because it's like, bro, Eric Molina, what the fuck has he done? Like, I always thought that it was insane how Eric Molina kept getting these title opportunities. He got this title opportunity and this title shot against Wilder. He got this title shot against Anthony Joshua, and then the WBC puts him in a position to win another title opportunity, right? If he would have beaten Dominic Breazeale, he would have been in line for Deontay Wilder. He would have been his mandatory, right? So I remember just thinking, again, I had no problem with Dominic Breazeale fighting for, a title eliminator, for a mandatory position. But I just had a big problem with Eric Molina because I was like, dude, this guy hasn't done anything. So again, they put this weak fight to determine against Eric Molina and Dominic Breazeale to determine who would be the mandatory for Deontay Wilder, which, like I said, I just think it's dumb. But again, when it comes to the WBC, I feel that they protect Wilder, and that's why they let him have these voluntaries against these guys that nobody ever heard of. That's why they put the guys in there to win mandatory positions. They put them in there against weak oppositions. So then Deontay Wilder is forced to face a weak mandatory. So again, Dominic Breazeale is not the worst guy in the world, but he's also not the best guy. But yeah, there you have it. That's what I think, at least. Again, I'm not really mad at Dominic Breazeale facing Deontay Wilder. I don't think it's the greatest fight. I think Deontay Wilder will beat him, but I'm not gonna also come in here and say it's the worst fight in the world, because I think Wilder defended his belt against worse opposition, like a Joe Hindu Paz or something. So yeah, that's all I have to say, guys. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, and I'm out.